There's a particular kind of tension that only really exists inside a home, not out in the world where roles are clearer and expectations are more defined, but inside that shared space where people know each other too well, where habits have formed over years, and where authority isn't just about rules, it's about identity, about who gets to speak and who gets heard. And that's the feeling that keeps coming back to me whenever I settle into an episode of All in the Family that leans into that idea of authority being challenged at home. Not in some dramatic or explosive way, but in those quiet, persistent moments where control starts to slip just a little. And I keep thinking about one kind of situation that captures this so perfectly. One where the conflict doesn't begin with a major event, but with something almost routine. Something that would barely register in another show, like a decision about how the household should run. Who gets to decide what? Who has the final say? It might start with something simple. Maybe Gloria and Mike make a decision without consulting Archie. Something about how they're going to handle their own lives within the house. Maybe finances, maybe responsibilities, maybe even just how they spend their time. And on the surface, it feels reasonable, like two adults making their own choices. But then Archie finds out, and that's where everything shifts. Because for Archie, the house isn't just a place to live. It's a structure, a system, one where he sees himself as the center, the authority, the person whose voice carries the most weight. And when that structure is challenged, even in small ways, it doesn't feel like a simple disagreement. It feels like something deeper, something more personal. He reacts the way he always does, with certainty, with that grounded confidence that comes from years of believing in a particular order. And he tries to reassert that authority, to remind everyone how things are supposed to work. Mike, of course, doesn't accept that framework, not quietly, not passively, because for him, authority isn't something that should be unquestioned, especially not in a shared living space where everyone has their own voice, their own agency. And so he pushes back, not just on the decision itself, but on the idea that Archie gets to decide in the first place. And that's where the conversation starts to build, not as a structured argument, but as a series of overlapping reactions, each one shaped by who these people are. Gloria feels it immediately, because this isn't just about rules or decisions, it's about her place in the house, her independence, her relationship with both her father and her husband, and her emotional response brings a different kind of intensity to the moment. And then there's who moves through the space with that gentle awareness of how fragile these moments can be, trying to keep things from breaking apart completely, not by taking control, but by offering small moments of understanding, of kindness. What makes this situation so compelling is that the challenge to authority isn't framed as a single act of rebellion. It's something that unfolds gradually, through conversation, through small shifts in behavior, through the way people respond to each other. The living room becomes the center of it all, that familiar space where everything plays out, where there's no escape from the tension, where every word carries weight because it's heard by everyone immediately without distance. And as the conversation continues, you start to notice how it doesn't move toward a clean resolution. It doesn't follow a clear path from conflict to solution. Instead, it loops, it builds, it circles back. And that's because the tension is coming from something deeper than the situation itself. It's coming from the clash between Archie's need for authority and the other's need for autonomy. And neither of those things can be easily resolved, because they're tied to identity, to belief, to the way each character understands their place in the world. The humor in these moments comes from that clash, from the way Archie tries to reassert control, from the way Mike challenges him, from the way Gloria reacts emotionally, and from the way gently shifts the tone. You might laugh at how firmly Archie holds onto his role, at how he frames his arguments, at how he tries to bring everything back under his control. And at the same time, you might feel the discomfort underneath it, the recognition that this isn't just about being right, it's about feeling secure. And that's what made All in the Family so groundbreaking, especially in the 1970s, because it was willing to explore these kinds of domestic tensions openly, to show how authority within the home could be questioned, challenged, reshaped. At a time when traditional family structures were when ideas about gender roles and generational hierarchy were shifting, the show brought those changes into the most intimate setting possible, the home. And it didn't present those changes as smooth or easy. It showed how messy they could be, how uncomfortable, how emotionally charged. As the scene unfolds, you can see how Archie's reactions aren't just about control, they're about fear, about the sense that something is slipping away, that the role he's always understood himself to have is no longer as solid as it once was. Mike's challenges push that fear into the open, forcing it to be addressed even if it's not fully acknowledged. And Gloria's responses highlight the emotional impact of that shift, the way it affects relationships, the way it changes the dynamic of the household. This presence, as always, provides a kind of balance, a reminder that even in the middle of conflict, there's still care, still connection, still something holding these people together. And yet nothing is fully resolved. Archie doesn't suddenly relinquish his sense of authority. He doesn't completely accept the new dynamic. But there are moments, small ones, where something shifts, where he hesitates, where you can see the possibility of change, even if it doesn't fully take hold. And that's where the show feels so honest, because it doesn't pretend that authority can be redefined in a single conversation. It shows how deeply rooted these ideas are, how they persist even when they're challenged. As the tension begins to ease, as the conversation winds down, there's no clear victory, no moment where one perspective completely wins out, just a gradual return to something quieter. But the shift has happened, even if it's subtle, even if it's incomplete, and that shift becomes part of the ongoing dynamic, something that will influence future conversations, future conflicts. Watching it now, you can still feel how relevant it is, because questions about authority, about control, about who gets to decide, are still very much part of everyday life. The specifics may have changed, the context may be different, but the underlying tension, the challenge of balancing authority and autonomy remains. And that's why the show continues to resonate, because it doesn't offer easy answers. It doesn't simplify the conflict, it lets it exist. It lets it be complicated, uncomfortable, real. As the living room settles back into its familiar rhythm, as the characters return to their routines, there's a sense that the conversation isn't over, that it's just paused, waiting to continue. And maybe that's the most important thing the show does. It keeps the conversation alive. It invites you to sit with it, to think about it, to recognize those same dynamics in your own life. So when the moment ends, when the room grows quiet again, there's still something lingering, something unresolved, something that stays with you. And that's the kind of storytelling that doesn't fade, because it's not just about what happens, it's about what it reveals, about the way it reflects something deeper, something ongoing.